Module 2, Style. What is style? Style can be many things to many people. For you, it will be the unique way you arrange the materials that will make up your garden. Usually, creating garden designs with style is a compromise between your wants and your constraints. Wants will vary from person to person. A family with 6 energetic children might desire hardiness over aesthetics. A retired couple may want a more aesthetic garden. A homeowner in a new suburban neighborhood may want just anything to cover the dirt left by the developer. So wants can range from merely functional to wildly biodiverse landscapes. It is common for gardens to have a theme around which the style is developed. Themes can be simple, as those based on a particular plant type or color. They can be complex, based on a particular period or trend. Whatever the theme may be, it can help unify your garden design by tying the various parts together. As well, it can help you decide on a style. Whichever style you opt for, here are some stylistic tenets that gardeners should be aware of. Although these fundamentals may seem obvious to some, others may find this information welcome. There is no ultimate garden design. The first rule of garden design is that there is no ultimate garden design. Your garden design should fit your site and your wants. There may be several wonderful designs that accomplish this. Your goal should be a garden that does what you want it to do and looks the way you want it to look. Our goal is to help you achieve that goal. While there isn't an ultimate garden design, there are successful and unsuccessful gardens. Garden design takes time and vision. The notion of deferring your gratification is no better demonstrated than by gardening. 5 years will pass quickly in retrospect, and remembering this when you plant can enhance your garden. Gardens grow and evolve, and you want to anticipate the mature growth of your plants. Resisting the temptation to fill in between plants that have been properly spaced when young will pay big dividends in aesthetic and personal satisfaction when they mature. Focus on the design, not the plants. More often than not, plant arrangement is more important than the plants. If you just plant a bunch of your favorite plants, you will have a garden which is limited to a jumble of your favorite plants. If you design your garden and choose plants that are appropriate to your constraints and theme, you can have a healthy, interesting, and beautiful garden. Nothing is etched in stone. From time to time, you may see a mistake in the design of your garden or selection of your plants. Sometimes a plant won't thrive, or it doesn't fit in the way you hoped. Before losing any sleep, you should look at your discovery as a positive experience. Simply put, not all gardening mistakes are bad, and usually all of them are learning opportunities. Often you can correct things easily, and over time your tastes may change in favor of the mistake. If a particular plant keeps dying, try to find out why. Or try a different plant. If something looks out of place, move it. Don't be afraid to change an experiment. That is often the real joy of gardening, and you can get a lot of gardening wisdom by dealing with adversity. Look at other gardens. If you see a garden design that someone else has created and you like it, there is nothing wrong with borrowing ideas from it. Then you can enhance or personalize it as your site requires. You may like the selection of plant materials or just the curves that were used in another design. You can let other gardens inspire your creativity. You have to start somewhere. Learn about plants. The more plants you are familiar with, the better you will be able to choose plants that fit your design requirements. Also, the more plants you know, the more creative you can be. Websites, blogs, books, magazines, and friendly suggestions can help considerably. In gardening, as with most things, knowledge is power. Anything that can supplement your experience should be welcomed. Rules are meant to be broken. In this module, we teach you about the elements of garden style. If you use our advice, you will produce better garden designs. However, that doesn't mean these concepts have to be steadfastly followed. Many pioneering designers have broken with conventional wisdom and gone on to produce some remarkable landscapes. Scale. A sense of scale can help when designing a garden. Keep the relative sizes and distances of the plants in mind, because the way plants fit into their surroundings can have a dramatic effect on the viewer. The goal should be to balance both the scale of the objects in your landscape to each other and to the viewer. There are no hard and fast rules here. You have to be the judge. Still, keep some notion of scale in your designing arsenal. Subtle attention to it can pay big rewards later, when the garden matures. Scale depends heavily on the viewing perspective, so try to think like a photographer. Determine a fixed viewing area, a porch, picture window, curbside, and view your garden site through a picture frame or a camera lens. Look for things that seem out of proportion, e.g. large trees near a small house, small flowers hidden in a large bed, a huge tree too close to your viewing window where all but the trunk is obscured. All of these things and more can disturb the picture. A photographer will arrange things to capture a balanced, stimulating image. As a garden designer, you can do the same thing. You can choose plants and locations that bring the picture into proportion. When you plant beds, one option is to arrange taller plants in back, shorter runs in front, and step up the height gradually. This can add depth and a clear sequence to a garden design. Alternatively, you can alternate plant heights to create peaks and valleys within your garden terrain. If there is a noticeable gap in the viewing window that demands attention, fill it with something. If you have a large plant or structure that dominates your site, try to draw attention away from it with clever visual distractions. Of course, in most cases, you will have constraints. You probably can't move your house, and you may not want to remove that big tree growing next to the garage. You may get a good scale from one perspective, but not from another. Sometimes your site leaves you with little room to work with. Our suggestion is to acknowledge what you can't change, blend in some imagination, and work with the stuff you can change. Do your best, and you won't go wrong. Any attention to proper scale is better than none at all. Symmetry. In general, symmetry involves mirror imaging. Items are symmetrical if their parts are uniformly balanced and spaced on each side of a dividing line. Items which are not symmetric are asymmetric. In gardening, symmetry implies formality, and asymmetry implies informality. Strict formality requires control, order, and symmetry. Straight lines, perfect balance, and repetition of geometric patterns. Strictly speaking, informality entails an asymmetric variety of free-form shapes in a random order. Most gardeners try to balance the extremes by blending some formal characteristics with a few informal ones. Thus, you may have sharp lines and nearly symmetrical arrangements with some variety and contrast thrown in to make the garden comfortable and pleasing. One general rule to be aware of: formal styles are well suited close to a house, and informal styles work well farther from the house. The formality nearby helps to relate the rigid lines of the house to the surrounding landscape. Note: one concept utilized in garden design is balance. While symmetrical designs are inherently balanced, asymmetrical designs can be balanced as well, provided the weight of the design is spread out proportionately. A well-balanced design can help create a sense of peace and tranquility in a landscape. Simplicity. Simplicity when designing can be good. While you don't want to overdo it, deliberate spacing, uncluttered beds, repetition of plants, and simple lines can enhance your garden and make it easy for the viewer to appreciate it. It also helps the viewer discern subtle changes in style as they are led through the garden. We mention this because many people tend to cram lots of everything into their garden sites, and after the first year, they find that the garden is too crowded to work in. The plants don't mature as fast because they are cramped, and when the blooms are finished, the garden looks like a big, cluttered mess. Variety. A garden with a broad assortment of plants and arrangements can be a genuine delight. A variety of different plants can open new doors to contrast and beauty. After you have decided on a theme and style for your garden, try to select a variety of plant shapes and sizes that fit your theme and your site constraints. You don't want to overdo it, though. Keep your design simple, but remember that variety can be the spice of your garden. On the same note, try to find creative garden uses for interesting terrain features. That rock outcrop may look like an eyesore, but with some imagination, you can turn it into a pleasing garden. Sometimes it is better to enhance the unusual features of a landscape rather than remove them and start from scratch. Remember, though, that if you want to use that terrain feature to your advantage, then don't design something which covers it up or detracts from it. Rooms. If you have a large site, you may want to break it up into rooms or compartments. The rooms in your house may have different styles and tones, and your garden can be like that as well. You may have a formal room, an informal room, a tea room, a solitude room. Fences and other structures can help enclose various rooms, but you can make rooms simply by having different themes in different parts of your site. Deception. When designing gardens, you may want to create impressions that deceive. The small wooded patch in your backyard can give the appearance of a large wooded patch. A path that looks like a peaceful stroll to Eden may just lead to your pool filtration system. Hide air conditioning systems, electrical conduit boxes, and other eyesores with a few well-placed plants. By being creative, you can mask many of your site constraints and create a nice retreat. One useful deceptive technique involves slightly obscuring a view or path to instill a sense of curiosity in the viewer. A carefully placed plant or obstruction can entice garden visitors to explore further to see what may lay beyond. Choose plants for all seasons. Many plants look good throughout the year. A deciduous shrub may have nice foliage and blooms during the growing season, while in the winter it may have berries that attract birds. Some perennials look good even when dormant. Dead stalks and flowers can add a nice touch to the landscape during the bleak winter months. Arrangement. Arrangement. Beds and borders. Beds and borders frame your garden by defining its size and shape. When creating natural gardens, i.e. woodland gardens or desert gardens, you may not want to use them. Just let the plants fit the landforms. Beds and borders are more effective around a house or other large structure since they help relate your landscape to it. There are two types of beds, freeform and geometric. As you might expect, the former is more informal and the latter is formal. Below are some tips for both. Lines. Keep lines simple and avoid too many changes in direction. Also, keep lines sharp. Good edging creates a strong visual impression. Curves. You may want to use curves when creating garden beds or borders. Curves can have a powerful effect when used properly because they help your site stand out. Here are some points to remember. Let curves fit the terrain. The terrain may lend itself toward a particular curve. Try to identify that curve and exploit it. Keep curves simple. Too many curves, especially wavy curves, can create a mess that is hard on the viewer. Keep curves subtle and smooth. Abrupt curves are less effective visually than smooth curves. Use a hose to determine which curves you like best. Plants. Specimen. When you plant a single plant which is large enough to stand alone and not get lost in the background, you are specimen planting. You can specimen plant to highlight plants, either by themselves or in a mixed planting, such as in a perennial garden. Plants chosen for specimen planting usually have characteristics that help them stand out nicely. Grouping. For grouping, plant with either a uniform or staggered layout. Grouping highlights plants that, when planted alone, are not big enough to stand out. Unlike massing, however, a group highlights the individual plants as well. Arrange it so there is a delicate balance between the plant shape and the shape of the overall group. Massing. Massing allows you to highlight a particular area of your property. It lends itself toward simplicity and is very effective when used with plants that by themselves or in small groups would become lost in the background. Massing helps bring large sites into scale as well, since a massed group seen from a distance can help fill a void on your garden canvas. When massing, the individual plant yields to the overall shape of the mass. Thus, it is the shape of the whole planting that you emphasize. Tip: triangular plant arrangements can unify a garden very effectively. Use 3 plants that will stand out a bit from the rest of the planting and arrange them in a triangular pattern. Any triangle will do. The closer the arrangement is to an isosceles triangle, the more formal the arrangement will be. Texture. Texture refers to the visual feel of a plant. You can take advantage of differently textured plants to create contrasts, define a space, or set a theme for your garden. Small-leafed or needled plants are considered fine-textured. They have a soft appearance and appear blurry when viewed from afar. The fine texture helps create a sense of space. Large-leafed plants have a coarse texture. These usually stand out when viewed from afar, and they tend to make spaces look smaller. Color. Color can be used for a few important purposes. It creates a sense of space, it can help you create themes, and in general, it makes a garden psychologically uplifting. It's good to use colors as a guideline in design, but don't worry about it too much. It's very hard to wreck a garden with improper color use. In fact, it's hard to know just what would constitute improper color use. Neutral colors. Transitional colors which enhance your dominant colors. White helps tie lighter shades together, although it can also create strong contrasts between darker colors. White effectively brightens some shady areas also. Gray and silver foliage makes an excellent transition between different shades of green foliage. Warm colors. Approaching colors. They jump out and welcome you. Reds, oranges, and yellows. Cool colors. Receding colors. They pull away and leave you with a soft sense of space. Blues, purples, and greens. Color schemes. Monochromatic. Using a single color and its various shades. Polychromatic. Using different colors for contrast and balance. Analogous colors. Blending only warm or cool colors and their various shades together. Color contrasts, complementary colors. Mixing cool colors with warm colors. Experiment with various contrasts and you will be pleasantly surprised with the result. Color isn't just about flowers. Most of the time you'll be looking at the foliage and bark of a non-blooming plant, so be sure to consider the whole plant and not just the blooms. Incidentally, the foliage and bark color along with the shape and texture of the plant can be put to very effective use when designing. Subtle contrasts in all of these factors can have a powerful impact on your garden.